In a recent article for The Athletic, Kent Hughes and Xhekaj revealed their master roster plan for this year, which involves not trading guys that were once penciled in to be traded for certain before the end of the season. There's a lot of trade stuff we're going to get into on that front, including how Montreal could go after Nik Ehlers as speculation seems to be rising after his recent comments. And finally, we got to get into one more time an article from Nik Ehlers talking about the insane, almost once-in-a-lifetime defensive battle going down for the Habs. So you're going to want to stick around for this episode of Habs Digest. But Jesse, before we get into the video, just quickly, want to acknowledge the fact that Chris Wideman officially called it a career today. Now, we knew he had essentially retired before, but it's official today. He spent a good amount of time with Montreal, was a great presence in the locker room, was seemingly a great leader. Yeah, not everyone loved his play on the ice. He had a career best year with Montreal, and I just want to wish him the best in his retirement.
6 years in the NHL, amazing accomplishment, was really a great mentor for a lot of our younger players. We had a super young group. He was there to really be there for that young team. And again, he had that year in the KHL where he was one of the best offensive defensemen in that league. You know, so an amazing career, all the same from Chris Wideman being able to play in the show. So we wish him all the best in his next chapter.
Absolutely. Shout out to you, Chris Wideman. Hope you have a great time in retirement. Hope your body holds up. Let's get into the video. I want to start with this, and it's about to get intense, Jesse. We know this already. We know the defense is going to be crazy come this training camp. The Habs' official training camp roster was revealed. There's 59 people on it. There's a lot of people, including Carey Price, which a lot of people are seeing, but pretty sure that's just because he legally has to get a medical every year to keep his LTIR status. But regardless, Jesse, I want to get into this quote from Nik Ehlers in his recent article that will be linked down below as always. Please go read it. It's a fantastic piece. This is what he had to say. In 17 years covering the Canadiens, we haven't seen a crazier battle than what we're about to potentially witness at this camp. Matheson and Guhle are guaranteed their spots at the top, and Savard's likely anchoring the second pair. Then he goes on to talk about how you got Xhekaj, you got Barron, Struble. They start off ahead, but then you have Hudson, Mailloux, Reinbacher, and even Engstrom are knocking on the door. We've talked so much about this, Jesse, but to hear even a guy like Ehlers say, 17 years covering the Habs, never seen anything like this. I mean, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I know the same thing for you. And the fact that we saw in this rookie camp, these rookie games, guys like Engstrom standing out amongst the rest as maybe one of the more NHL-ready defensive prospects, it's starting to throw a bunch of question marks into the mix. We have this roster penciled in our heads, it's probably going to be this. But at the end of the day, I genuinely think there's going to be at least one very big surprise coming out of training camp. I don't know who, but I just got a funny feeling, Jesse. This is going to get crazy.
There has to be. And my insight into who I think this will be the player, the Habs young defenseman, that's best able to kind of fit into that fast-paced type of game that Marty St. Louis likes to play, that up-tempo. Whoever's going to be the best to adapt to that will get themselves a solid chance. Now, of course, Lane Hudson comes to mind right away. But besides the usual suspects, there is a chance that Mailloux beats out Struble, beats out Barrett. Basically, if you're Logan Mailloux, that's what you're thinking. If I beat both of these two players, I can get my spot on the lineup. And that is actually completely possible because as we're going to get into a little bit further on, we're not so much about player development now. A lot of this camp is really just going to be based off merit. Who's going to give this Habs chance the best chance of winning every night? And that's who Marty's going to go with.
That's a good point, right? The thing is, too, Montreal had so many issues in their own end the past number of years, and I think that's something we talk about, feels like every single video, right? So a guy like Mailloux doesn't necessarily help with that, but again, if you're going to go this kind of super fast-paced offensive style, like we've seen Montreal play at times, right? Maybe he is a better fit. It's about adapting to the system, too, but Marty is very adamant in letting players play their own game while also kind of, making sure the decisions are right and playing within the Habs system, which is why, I'm not saying Adam Engstrom's going to make the team, but I just got a feeling, Jesse, that watching him, he seems quite responsible. He seems mature. Again, he's not as good in his own end as he is in the offensive end, but he's one of those guys that just seems very poised. And with that, plus his skating ability, the shot that we saw in that rookie camp, I know training camp's a complete different beast. I'm not saying he's going to make the team, but I think he's going to be one of those guys that really forces their hand, really starts to raise question marks, because when you start to see guys that kind of don't really have as big a weakness across the board and they're kind of strong everywhere, every lineup needs a bit of that, especially in a team like Montreal where a lot of their guys are very heavy to one side or the other,
That's it. And Engstrom's definitely going to get his opportunity. You have to feel like along with Hudson, he's been one of the standouts. But, I mean, Mailloux had a very solid rookie camp as well. Reinbacher's doing a lot of subtle, really good things that, believe me, isn't lost on the coaches of all people. They get David Reinbacher's game for sure. They're a fan. So there's really those four. I would have to say they're all in the mix, absolutely. And it's such a pleasure to be able to say that from such a young core. And that's, again, to echo Eric Engel's sentiments. Absolutely, that's what makes us so exciting. The fact that we got four young guys that could be knocking at the door. Now, we know with just the North American experience how it goes. Like Hudson Mailloux might be above Reinbacher, Engstrom, even though Engstrom arguably has been the second best young defender at camp. Again, that experience just playing in North America might factor into that decision a little bit. That being said, you have to feel really excited about not only what we're going to have in Montreal this year, but also Laval.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy year. Well, let us know down below what your thoughts are on this. We ask you pretty much every video, but you guys always really engage with this stuff, so it's a ton of fun. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But we got a lot to get into in this video, Jesse, so we're going to quickly move on to something that, look, we're just going to be straight up. I don't see this happening right now, but we've seen speculation pick up on this, and that is Nik Ehlers to Montreal. Now, we've heard this, Jesse. This is not a new thing, but there have been some new comments that have got some Habs fans kind of riled up about this. Like, oh man, he might fit. Teammates with Patrik Laine. It was a recent interview, and he had some really nice words to say about Patrik Laine, and he had some very nice words about Montreal, saying how Laine, when he loves playing hockey, like when he's on, he is just so amazing to play with. And even Ehlers said, Montreal's a fantastic place for him. So naturally, that spawned some articles and people talking on Twitter and all over the place about whether Ehlers could join Patrik Laine in Montreal. This article is linked down below as well. I mean, Jesse, look, I always feel like Ehlers is older than he is. He's only 28. I mean, he's turning 29 in February. That's halfway through the season. I don't know if he really fits that Habs timeline, but as the Habs are shifting now their gears into a more win-now mode, as it's going to happen over the next couple of seasons, we're going to talk about that a bit later, a guy like this could fit. But to me, I'm just going to straight out say, like, even though there's all this discussion and, you got praise from Ehlers in Montreal, to me, this doesn't fit right now. Maybe if he was available in a couple of years and he was 28 years old, maybe I would do it. Maybe the perspective will shift if Montreal really has a better season than expected, but I don't see this. What do you think?
Two ships passing on the night. And believe me, like Nicklas Ehlers, like he's a solid hockey player. He's looking for a new home. You have to feel like there's some interest there in saying that Laine's going to love playing in Montreal. But I think, slow and steady sort of wins the race. Like already the expectations are high, but I don't know if Hughes wants to ramp it up right away. But that being said, if we look at his stats over the course of his career, how incredibly consistent is this player? Like, you can jot him down for easy 25 goals being healthy in a season, which he's shown that he can do quite a bit. So this is a good player. And if you're able to get a player like this that's kind of on your third line, maybe playing a little bit of second, like that's the making of a very deep team if you're in a situation where you're having a Nicklas Ehlers on your third line. So while I don't feel like it's exactly that perfect time, like I think Kent Hughes is knowing what this team needs, adding to it kind of methodically without kind of wanting to take those quantum leaps kind of all at once. I do believe there is a time to do that when you feel like you're a competitive team. You're right there at the Stanley Cup and you kind of want to take it over the top. And that's absolutely when you do a trade for a player that has a proven track record of being able to score consistently at a very good clip in the NHL. Good player, just not the time.
Yeah, I really like Nik Ehlers, and it's really fun to kind of brainstorm and think what the lines would look like if you add him to the Habs lineup and you bring Demidov over next year. It's fun to brainstorm on that. It could happen. I just don't think these comments necessarily mean anything, but maybe some of you disagree. Maybe some of you are all in on the Nik Ehlers train, and if you are, let us know down below. Let us know why we're wrong, and let us know why you think Ehlers should be a Montreal Canadian. Final thing, Jesse, I want to get into some of these comments from Hughes and Gorton because they revealed kind of a lot, and this is from an Athletic article from Arber and Basu, which, again, is linked down below. Guys, we put the links always down there for you guys to go read it because some great stuff if you have an Athletic subscription. And this was really interesting. So we're just going to get straight into the quotes here. So we're going to pop the first one up from Jeff Gorton. And Jesse, this is signifying a huge shift for Montreal. And this is the big thing for me. Jeff Gorton said the phrase I guess we use is in the mix. That's where we want to be, but I'm not going to put it past the Habs to make the playoffs. I know the players in that room feel very confident about their team and what we can do this year. But then it was Kent Hughes, Jesse, that said this, that really kind of painted that picture of this perspective shift in Montreal. He said, we're at a point where we're kind of coming out of it, kind of the rebuild, as I've described before. Our focus on accumulating assets, trying to do something to rebuild this team. As you kind of come out of that phase, you get to a point where maybe somebody on an expiring contract, and then Arber kind of talks about guys like Dvorak and guys like Savard who are expiring this year, and they're helping you win hockey games. You might want to keep them instead of trading them for an asset. Those are decisions from a management perspective that we have to evaluate. To hear this, Jesse, is very interesting, because to me, this is a very different plan than we've ever seen. And we knew this point was going to come eventually. We figured it was going to come this offseason, maybe even this season. We did kind of foresee this in a way. But to hear Kent pretty blatantly say, like, if we're winning games, we might not trade these guys. Kent has been so adamant about getting value for guys, not losing them for nothing. But we're seeing that shift right now before our eyes, as Montreal is turning into a team that is sort of going to be started to, we're going to start to expect wins from them. Maybe not as much this season, but in the next couple of seasons. So to hear this from his mouth has me very, very excited to see what's next in store, because I don't know, like, this is the pivot point for this franchise, I think.
Yeah, and you have to feel like he's really talking about like a player like a David Savard there, where it's like when they're talking about being in the mix, like it's not just words for them, like they're actually backing it up with actions. And what are we going to have as a course over the season to really put ourselves in the best position? They said, I really feel like that applies to a David Savard kind of down the stretch of how he can help you. So just showing that we really want to be competitive, and we're going to do whatever we really need to do to make that happen. But we know, Josh, like we got a little bit of a hole to dig ourselves out of still. We got to score more goals, to put it in a nutshell, and also have less goals against, get our power play to where it really needs to be. If we can obviously take big jumps of those three things, obviously we'll be taking a big step up. But it's also in relation to as well where Hughes was talking about, like, even young players that we have, like he's going to feel like, okay, who's going to give us the best chance to win in kind of December in later on the season? So does that mean kind of putting a player in the lineup maybe a little bit earlier to feel like they could really be beneficial, But it's not just him. Like Zooks is so excited just about like the depth of this team as well. And he really feels like for this reason that we can take those steps forward. So that is what's kind of giving Kent Hughes that ammo to really do what's best for this team, not be doing those type of Sean Monahan trades where we're doing what's best for the future of the organization. We're now kind of taking that turn, and we're going to need to really judge these players off of what they're bringing to the table and really hold on to them if they're bringing it every night.
Yeah, it's going to be such an interesting season. Like, this article paints a great picture, and other articles as well, of how there's so many question marks surrounding Montreal. Will the goaltending hold up? Do we really know that answer? Not really. Who will be there on defense by the end of the season? Will this forward depth hold up? Will Laine end up being that good? Will Caufield finally take that jump to a 40-goal score? What does a full season of Kirby Dach look like? There's more questions than answers at this point, but all things considered, it's great to see that the front office is kind of shifting their perspective. I mean, I think this was all part of the plan from the start of, now we're heading into this time. If we're winning, we're not changing things. We're going to do things to win games. We still have a ton of assets. We have like 9 picks in the first 4 rounds of this year's draft, guys. Let us know down below what you think about these comments, because honestly, it has us pretty pumped up. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. We're going to have a lot more covering this stuff in the next few days, but if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us reach our goal of 15K subs. It's going to get tough. It's going to get tough to get there, but I know you guys can help us out by hitting the button down below. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.